In a previous video, I've spoken about the origination of spirituality or religion within European society. That initially religion started as a set of behaviors that increased the people's likelihood of survival. However, spirituality means so much more than just a behavior. After all, animals adopt certain behaviors to react to changes in their environment. So do animals then possess a type of spirituality? The best way to explain what spirituality is a grouping of values that don't relate to the environment, but rather relate to humanity. Concepts like bravery, loyalty, and piety are all regarded as defining qualities of a good person. But why? There is no natural incentive to have these values, and in most cases, these qualities are more likely to get you killed rather than save your life. It is typical in the animal world to defend the young up to a point, but the majority of the time, the animal will simply abandon the baby to the predator and simply try again next year. So if this is an effective strategy across many species, why is it that human parents will die protecting their young? Why do we hate those who fail to protect their children? It is because of the religious belief in the family, the position of the parents as protectors and carers. If you don't take the raising of your children seriously, then you have failed in your sacred duty as a parent, and you've committed a grave sin because of your irresponsibility. This also has implications in the cyclical nature of life, and the goal of every European to be succeeded by their children. Whilst the child is the property of the parent, it is seen as foolish and hateful should a parent bring harm to their children. So if spirituality stems from a people's values, then what is the spirituality of the European people? To answer this, we merely need to look back into our cultural heritage, to find common stories shared across European peoples that repeat both in mythology and folklore, that hold great symbolic meaning. To begin this analysis, we will explore the common origination of the world with regards to various European cultures, this origination being the overthrow of the tyrannical unity. In both Italo-Greek and Germanic mythology, there exists the figure of the tyrant as the start of the universe, Uranus and Ymir. These tyrants are commonly referred to as male, but are in fact hermaphrodites, possessing both male and female aspects. They were tyrants because they dominated the universe by enforced unity, Ymir being described as so large that he took up all the space in the universe, that is until Odin desired a space for himself and slew Ymir, using the dome of his skull to create the heavens, his blood for the sea, and his bones for the earth. So we see the heroic figure establish a kingdom or space by destroying the unity of the universe and establishing boundaries where he determines what laws apply where. The Italo-Greek story is similar, if not a little more convoluted. The origination of the Greek gods comes from the primordial mother Gaia, who gave birth to a son, Uranus, to impregnate her to create the Titans, essentially a hermaphroditic act, because Gaia produced a son with no father in order to create the Titans. Uranus, a part of Gaia, hated his children, and so hid them in Gaia, again enforcing unity. When Uranus is killed by Kronos, it is described as the separation of heaven and earth, and so Kronos came to be the second king of the cosmos. However, just like his father before him, Kronos understood that he too would be overthrown by his children, and in order to prevent this, he ate them. So taking them into his body, enforcing unity, that is until Zeus killed him and freed his siblings. This is a mere retelling of the basic story of creation of the world, and how the king of the heavens came to be. There is a lot more symbolic meaning in these stories, but for the sake of a video that doesn't run hours long, I'm just going to give the basic ideas and values from these stories. So understanding these basic stories leads us to understand the hero of these stories being the king of the heavens, who created borders so that they may rule over a kingdom. And as a result of the creation of these borders through the destruction of the terrible unity, created the concepts of freedom and order. However, as gods gave birth to men, men were divine but lesser when compared to the gods, and yet were capable of great deeds. These deeds were required to sanctify the founding of a kingdom upon the earth. The most common of these deeds were those when retrieving something from the realm beyond, not heaven but the realm of the dead. The kingdom of Hades to the Greeks, the fields of Elysium to the Romans, Helheim to the Germans, the land of youth to the Celts. All these realms are accessible by passing over water. Some heroes find women, weapons, wealth, or some form of power. This is probably the most basal story alongside the creation myth of the Europeans, as it follows the basic structures so often repeated in beginner writing classes. The hero sets out on a journey to prove himself, but in order to do so he passes through the darkness, to emerge on the other side stronger and more divine than ever. This is the origination of the rite of passage for people of the world. In order for them to be recognized by the gods and their fellow men, they must have some sort of achievement, the pursuit of which is inevitably described as a struggle sparking a fundamental change in the initiate, which can be described as the death of the youth and the birth of the adult. When the hero in the story acquires something from the land of the dead to bring back to the realm of the living, it can mean a myriad of things. A woman can obviously help you start a family, making the foundations of a community, expanding into a kingdom. A weapon empowered by the ancestors could be used to conquer foes, etc., etc. Again, not really going deep into the symbolic meanings of all these stories, but to summarize the meaning of the story is as follows: that the journey of life is difficult and hazardous, but those who overcome and are able to grow will leave a great legacy. Finally, we come to our third basal story, that of the dragon slayer. The dragon slaying story is again a common story repeated across Europe and other Indo-European cultures, as far away as India. In India, Indra, the Vedic equivalent of Thor, threw war darts at the great serpent to slay it in order to release the waters of the world, so that prosperity may return to the lands. Dragons are often synonymous with upheaval in the world, as great beasts of destruction and chaos, often portrayed on a hoard of wealth, or with a princess hostage is essentially the same thing, as wealth and women represent potent potential but require a man in order for them to be of any use. In the tale of Jason and the Argonauts, Jason seduces the princess so that she can cast a spell to make the dragon sleep, so he can take the golden fleece. Sigmund, in the Germanic tradition, slays the dragon Fafnir to acquire the dragon's hoard, as well as gain the power to understand all speech. How the Dragon Slayer story differs from the Journey to the Underworld story is that the dragon is a hostile entity that actively goes out of its way to kill, whereas the Journey to the Underworld is more of a perilous journey with no major antagonist. The symbology of dragons is also sometimes compared to that of hostile armies, who marched in a column that would surely have appeared serpentine-like when viewed from a distance, with shields on backs glistening like scales, and the army laying waste to the land as a way to sustain itself on the march. Again, not getting too deep into the symbolic meaning of the many stories involving dragons. However, to summarize, dragons represent a hostile entity with ruinous intentions that require a hero with a connection to the divine to slay them in order to seize the wealth, once jealousy guarded by the beast, in order to bring prosperity to the land. So now that we have reviewed the most basal stories of the European people revolving around the ordering of the cosmos, as well as our earthly home, what do we understand of European spirituality? We recognize that the European ideal of man is not someone who serves, but acts, in accordance to what is good. The people of Europe are not separate from the gods, but share aspects of divinity with them as a result of being their children. This stands in contrast to the Christian ideal of man as one who serves, that achieves salvation not based on their actions, but their willingness to submit to the authority of the Christian God. Basically, to the European, your actions mark you as either destined for heaven or destined for Hades. Whereas with Christianity, so long as you do it as the Christian God says, regardless of your terrible deeds, you may achieve salvation. This conflict of ideal man has shaped the Europeans' approach to spirituality for about a millennium, with Christianity failing time and again to assert itself, only holding power in Europe for a period of around 300 years, in which it tried to use its authority to expand its influence and consolidate power, with the people and the monarchs both rejecting the authority of the Vatican in favor of traditional values and modes of governance. The great Christian theocracy of Europe was vanquished while still leaving scars on European culture. It did not do enough damage to render European spirituality unviable. The ideal man of Europe is not the martyr but the hero, not the servant but the king. What this means for religious philosophy will be expanded upon in other videos. Until next time.